Hi everyone, my name is Katelyn Procci. I am the project manager and research coordinator for the UCF Retro Lab. I'm here today to talk to you about a project which we did for the US Navy to help better train shipboard navigation skills in recruits. But I'm not really here to talk about the project, but the process. So we've heard a lot about modding games today, and modding games is something that everyone in the audience now can do. So I know you're here at the festival, you're getting a lot of great ideas, you want to go get started. It's great because you can collaborate with maybe some devs that are in the audience, but on your own, there's some stuff that you can do as well. So I would like to kind of give you my experience so that you can learn from it, give you some of the lessons that I found out while we were trying to mod so that you may apply them to your own dev projects. So let's get started. All right, so we're all on the same page. What do I mean here by modding? There's a lot of different meanings in the gaming community for what is modding, but I specifically mean taking software tools provided by the developer to add original content to existing games. So modding is great for the gaming industry. It prolongs the shelf life of the game, it increases replay value, whole user communities spring up, they make new content, it promotes innovation, it gives really great feedback to the developer about their game, and of course, really great modders themselves can be hired and turn their passion into a career. So there are a lot of great games that have spawned some really great mods, which themselves have become games. So Half-Life gave us Day of Defeat, Team Fortress Classic, and Counter-Strike, which continues to be a commercial success today. Warcraft 3 gave us Dota, which gave us a whole new genre of gaming to have fun with. So mods are great, but their benefits really do transcend that to just the gaming industry. As people who want to create unique experiences to inform, make change, educate, it's a tool that we can harness and use for ourselves. So for us, there's really two uses of mods. One is participatory learning, which we've heard a lot about today. It's really great that you can take content and have students mod a game to make a game out of that content. So there are a lot of case studies where this is very successful. We've heard a lot about it today. People get engaged. You learn how to do teamwork. You learn how to communicate with others. You learn about game development. And then you also get those like girls who otherwise may not be engaged in computer science interested from an early age. So they're wonderful. But they also provide us really inexpensive tools to actually make our own gaming experiences, perhaps if we don't have a dev team. So going way back, kind of the precedent for this, training simulations have always been prohibitively expensive to develop from scratch. So one of the first ways this was addressed was in the late 1980s with the Intelligent Maintenance Training System. Essentially, it's an intelligent tutor simulation that taught people how to maintain really complex mechanical systems, so engines for big ships, stuff like that. But doing that from scratch is really expensive, so IMTS was really important because it was one of the first to have rudimentary authoring tools. So essentially someone could have this really cool simulation, go in, build their own library of objects, put them all together, and then create something runnable so that they have a new system that they can train with, and it was found to be very effective. Games, as we know, are also extremely expensive to develop from scratch, which is exactly why game engines exist, right? But beyond that, mods are accessible tools that we can use even if we don't have a really huge amount of programming experience to create games. So this is kind of where my story starts. A little bit of background. We did a project funded by the Office of Naval Research to better train US Navy recruits. Now, working with Raytheon BVN Technologies, they helped to develop the Vessel Damage Control Trainer, or DCT, which is a game played by these recruits to teach them about damage control procedures. So basically, you're on a sinking ship, how do you save your life and the lives of others? Right? So they managed development while we took care of research and validation. So we had a lot of flexibility, and we could pretty much do whatever we wanted to look at games and game-based training and games for learning. So one of the really, really difficult challenges in the Navy is how do you train recruits shipboard navigation skills? So imagine a Navy ship. It's huge, lots of levels. So everything is kind of set up on this numerical grid system. So all spaces, hallways, you name it, kind of have this numerical address, sometimes referred to as a bullseye, that has your deck, where you are along the frame, and where you are to center line. Now, even though the interiors of ships change, it all conforms to the system. So once you know it, you should be able to know how to go wherever you're reported or ordered to go. But unfortunately, this system is really, really, really difficult for new recruits. They go to a ship for the first time, they get really lost, they don't know what they're doing. It's kind of a difficult training problem. So we tried to address it by doing this like little point and click game to kind of get them used to using the system called the Navy Bullseye Trainer, and we validated it and it didn't work. So we had to kind of brainstorm, how on earth could we make a game that would train these recruits to use this system of navigation. Like, we were thinking that maybe we can make something with the quest system and they would have to navigate by the quest over and over again and it'd be fun and they'd get it and they'd use it. And we didn't really know what to do. So we were all sitting around, they made grad students do a lit review and we're trying to figure out how do we best train this skill. And we had nothing. And then eventually one of our research assistants blurted out, well, Rivet City's a mod, let's just do that. So if you're familiar with Fallout 3, you know one of the major in-game locations is Rivet City. It's a big ship actually modeled in part after the World War II aircraft carrier, the USS Rivet City. Fallout 3 also comes with editing tools. We have the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, or the GEC, and that lets you add new quests, change the interior of the ship. It was pretty perfect. It's a big old ship. It was really confusing. I got lost in it the first time I ever played the game. We could mod it, we can add a quest. So what we did was basically we looked for someone with programming experience a little bit and someone who knew how to Photoshop. We found Dan Brown, he was an undergraduate at UCF in the digital media program, and we hired him. So the team was the two of us, and we codenamed our project USS Rivet City, and that's where we went from there. So our development project was kind of split up into 3 different stages. First we had planning, then we had development, and then we had testing. So I'm gonna go over each and tell you what we learned from each stage as we did it. So the first thing we did was we really had to plan. Now, we had this really great idea where we wanted to take Rivet City, put the placards all over all the doors according to the bullseye system, and then create a quest where they had to navigate to the system in the game, right? But we had all this stuff that we wanted, but we really needed to focus. So number 1, I say, have a plan with defined goals and really set down your objectives before you ever begin. So really important that you know where you want to go, and that will definitely drive your design from there. So after that, look at your objectives and then really determine the kinds of capabilities you need in the game. So what I said was maybe pick a game and a tool that best aligns with your goals, and then really consider the following elements. Do you want to be able to edit dialogue? Do you want to have your own quests and levels? What about the assets that already exist in the game? Do they kind of align with the kind of game that you want to make, or are you going to have to somehow make new assets and import them into your game? Think about the physical environment. Where does this gameplay take place? Can you edit the exteriors? Can you change the interiors? And finally, support. This is really important later as we'll go over, but is there a community on the internet that you can draw on for support in case you get stuck in your mod? So there are a lot of games out there that actually have their own modding tools, notably Doom from way back in the day. So what we did is we made a list of different games with different modding tools that might be valuable for you all, that kind of all hit the mark on the previous list that we had posted. They all have differing levels of difficulty and programming knowledge you need, but it's really worth checking out. So you have the Creation Kit from Skyrim, the Hammer SDK for any source engine games. Portal 2, like we saw, has its own editor, so does Left 4 Dead. You have the Electron toolset for Neverwinter Nights 2, the Warcraft 3 World Editor for Warcraft 3, and the Dragon Age toolset. So an example, maybe you really, really are interested in making a game in which players see the results of their effect on the environment by maybe adding cars, adding pollution, whatever. I bet you could probably make something really, really cool using Warcraft 3 World Editor. So just to give you an idea there. Step 2 was develop. So basically what Dan did was he stripped everything out of the ship, replaced some of the more damaged set pieces, doubled the lights, figured out what all the doors were according to the bullseye system and added placards. He added extra levels, and then he set up a quest. So in our quest, we would have people navigate to different rooms as instructed over intercoms. It's part of a roving security task that actually happens on real Navy ships, so that was pretty cool. Now, the GEC comes with a pretty awesome quest editor in which you have a quest with objectives. Each objective breaks down into dialogue options and trigger areas. So all he really had to do was make this environment, embed intercoms, and then set them up to have the right dialogue and have the right trigger. So it was pretty easy, but not as easy as it really sounds. So here's what we learned. Now, I had Dan kind of give you some advice from what he learned during the development process, and the number one thing was set a timeline, really schedule it out, and then double it to be realistic. So these tools have kind of a learning curve because they're really complex, but they can do really amazing things. But sometimes it's confusing to learn, sometimes they're not that usable. Give yourself time because you're gonna want more time to do it, trust me. We set this up to be like a month and a half, 2 months, and it ended up taking more like 4 or 5. And it was a pretty small mod, so know that. Things will go wrong, the program will crash, it'll happen. When I asked him what he would have done differently, he said definitely spending less time shaping the physical environment and really fine-tuning the quest. So again, add more time because you're going to want to tweak, you're going to want to test it out, you're going to want to play with it, you're going to want to make it as great as you can, and that takes time. Now, when I asked him what was the most awesome thing about the modding experience, he said that it was the community behind it. So while it's really, really great to try and learn by trial and error in these tools, whatever problem you're having, someone else has already done it and they know how to fix it and they are willing to help you. So there are wikis online, there's forums, there's so much online support for these tools because such huge user communities have grown up around them that they'd be more than willing to help you. So definitely do not be afraid to reach out and use these communities. They're there for you. And the last thing we did was test. So my background is in applied experimental human factor psychology, so I wanted to actually see if this worked, right? When we did the test, we did a pilot test where we essentially wanted to see whether or not our mod was a good test bed. So were we able to train these shipboard navigation skills and then could players execute them in this mod? So we did a study where we compared people with training and those who played TF2 instead for a while in the mod to see how well they did. And what we found was nothing. It seems that our mod was a complete bust. The people who had training versus the ones who didn't perform any differently in the mod, specifically the ability to travel between the doors and bullseyes in the quests. So nothing happened. And I didn't really know why, so I went to my research assistants and I was like, what is going on with these people? And they were like, well, the people mostly spent their time looking into corners, looking at the ceiling, running into walls. And I was like, how is that possible? Turns out that we really made the most rookie mistake of all time, so don't make it. We had completely failed at user-centered design. So one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give you is user testing, user testing, user testing. Using iterative user testing early on, even for just a mod, might have alerted us to this problem. So what can you do about that? Build it into your schedule. Try to do whatever you can to actually test with real users. Kind of my soapbox methodological issue here is that I do work at a university. We don't ever have access to actual US Navy recruits, so we had to test using psychology students, and it's not exactly the same population. So really strive to get real users to test your product because they'll give you insights that you otherwise wouldn't have. Secondly, kind of on the same note, your players, even though you are now making this mod, may not actually be gamers. So the game you're modding already exists, is already used by real gamers, however, they might not actually be gamers in real life. So you definitely want to account for that. So you might need to provide extra training, so extra tutorials in the beginning, ease the difficulty curve. Just know that even though you want this game and you want it to work, they just might not get it anyway. So I really encourage anyone who wants to make their own game-based experiences to give mods a try. We can all do it here, it's pretty accessible. But as long as you keep the following tips in mind, define your goals, determine your needs, pick the most suitable games and tools, give yourself more time than you think you will ever need, ask the community, use user testing, and know that your users are not likely to be gamers, you should be just fine. Thank you.